it'll be on in a sec.
Yo, what is going on, everybody? That was the sultry sounds of Hollis tinkling the mechanical keys as you tune in there. Hear the clitter, clatter, pitter patters. Welcome to Bad Publicity. Welcome to the Rain and Reverie review. Welcome to the criminal section. What's going on, fellas? Welcome back. We got some.
Hey.
I mean, things might not look or feel that different, but I'm using the new Skype. I mean, that's interesting. Whoa.
The future.
the claw.
The claw.
And that's about everything that's new on this side. How's everything with you fellas?
You know what? I was gonna say a lot of I'm well. I'm gonna just say I'm well. I'm trying out some new games. I'm interested to in the future look at Keyforge, but I don't want to put too many eggs in that basket. I'm gonna put that off to the side. We'll wait a little bit longer on that one. But I am interested. I want to take a look.
It certainly is interesting.
Yeah.
I don't quite know what to make of it yet. I'm not quite convinced that the model fits the sort of thing that we're necessarily interested in.
Right.
And as such, I don't know how much of the Netrunner crowd is going to be all that jazzed by the idea of rolling the big dice for a decent deck, but who knows? We'll see.
Yeah. It's a mixed bag.
Yeah.
So we got 7 cards to hit up tonight, fellas. Should we just stick a fork in this one here and get this cooking?
Yeah,
I think I'm ready to dive in.
it.
I'm ready to jump headfirst into some criminal cards because I like crim.
All
oh
right.
my gosh. Well,
Yeah, let's start off with the ID.
gentlemen, criminal, as you know, my favorite runner faction. And whenever we get an ID that breaks a new boundary for a faction, it's really exciting. And for me, Liza is exactly that excitingness. Things go pretty crazy when you run a Liza deck. So Liza Talking Thunder, which is Gmod, it's important. Link 0, a 50-size deck, 15 influence. And the ID says the first time you make a successful run on a central server each turn, you draw 2 cards, and you take 1 tag. So pretty massive free card draw in Criminal. This is a game changer. I think this ID is super solid. It's been making some waves, and
In a big way.
not a lot to talk about. Yeah. I think it's pretty fascinating.
I've seen some of the results coming in, and she's been battling 419 as the new kind of criminal runner of choice. I'm seeing tournaments kind of like the percentage of play kind of going back and forth like this. But I think the scale is going to tip to her favor. A lot of very, very strong tag me style criminals just coming out of this kind of build. Very interesting to see that from a 50 card deck, but the mechanic that is built into this ID, where criminal, most of their events are going to be central server HQ run style anyway. So again, you're doing that click compression inside of criminal, getting so much more out of one single run. So being able to pull 2 cards from that 50. You can just get through that deck like it's nothing. That's not even a concern, seeing the cards you need.
Yeah. It's crazy to me how much everything synergizes together in these tag me combo decks, right? Because you're getting the tag, You're getting the cards. It's getting you closer to your ultimate combo. The oftentimes these decks are running obelisks, which allows you to draw even more cards and increases your hand size to prevent somewhat against damage. And eventually you draw a Mars for Martians, perhaps. You get 1 billion credits. And then you drop counter surveillance, and you usually win the game. I've been playing this deck quite a bit, and it's pretty absurd. It gets up and going, and there are not many decks that can stop. I will say the one big asterisk here, it's an enormous asterisk, is that there's one card that was recently released that completely destroys this deck, this Tag Me deck. And it is a reason not to run the deck at all, because you will lose in almost every instance, and that is high-profile target. You load up against a Wayland deck, and I've sometimes been tempted to just concede, because it utterly annihilates you. So I don't know. It's really fascinating to have a deck that is so dominant in almost every matchup except one in which it's completely useless.
But you know what? From that aspect of the game is I would have loved to see I would have loved to see more pieces like that over the history of this game, where if there is something so dominant, then there's always, and not just garbage answers, just like decent answers that you can slot in to counter some of these other things, so that the makeup of decks can flush out a little more. And then also you get more of that layer on the metagame where it's not that whole Hollis probably remembers this stuff from like Pokemon style, where it's just that paper, rock, scissors thing, where if you bring one deck, it's going to beat this other deck, but that deck will beat this deck, but this deck will beat that. So you get this triangle thing. I don't mean that simple, but I mean like in the past we've seen FFG come out with silver bullets that who's going to play them? But this is viable, and as this style of deck picks up, it's not unrealistic. Hollis, do you have thoughts on when what was your first impressions when you saw a 50 card criminal?
Well, so similar to this is going to sound really sort of odd, but whenever I think of 50 card decks in general, my immediate comparison, as I think a lot of people kind of sort of go to, is Val. And I started thinking, okay, is the overall advantage provided from the ability going to be justifiable for, having a larger deck size, having a higher level of RNG? Because in general, in Netrunner, of course, you're going to have a decent amount of card quality draw, or at the very least, a heavy card quantity draw. And I feel like there's the options available within Criminal so they can draw already. So looking at a 50-card deck, I'm thinking, all right, well, if at a 50-card deck size, if my passive ability, no other cards included in the deck, my passive ability is to play the game I was going to play anyway, and just simply draw more cards as like a byproduct of that, it doesn't even seem like it's really that large of a negative comparatively. You know what I mean? I feel like it's sort of like how looking at Val, the fact that you basically get a free credit from the start for every run at the start of the game. You look at that and you're like, okay, well, really, that's worth 5 extra cards in my deck. That sounds pretty valuable. So the first time I make a successful run, I get to just draw 2 cards, take 1 tag, and I can do whatever I want with the tag. I can either run it, keep the tag, and just say whatever. This is a byproduct of me playing my best game, living my best life, or maybe I care about actually removing the tags, at least in between, right? Some small capacity where maybe in the early game, I'll get rid of them as I see it's available. But then later, as I get to late game, I'll go, you know what? I've got my new siphon. I've got my new siphon, and I've got other ways to mitigate the tags I would receive. So this is something I'll avoid doing. So I don't know. I really do. I immediately thought that this was a great idea from the moment I saw it. just because of the mere fact that just making a run on a central server draws you 2 cards. That's nuts. And the tag did not really seem like it was that bad. I do agree with Alec, however. High profile target, rip. Your game plan changes, which hinders like how great the ability can be as you progress towards certain stages of the game. But even with that, I think it's great. Still.
Yeah. I've been theory crafting a little bit on how possible it is to build a deck that has that counter surveillance combo, but can also pivot for the matchup where it's really not a good idea to go tag me. I'm not totally convinced that's possible yet, but if you're not interested in the tags and if you want to avoid them at all costs, I'm going to recommend a deck list that our erstwhile co-host David Weeks put together about a month ago. It's called Card Games on Motorcycles. You can find it on Netrunner DB. And those 5 extra card slots that you got to put in there, they're filled with 3 copies of Quanju PT and 2 copies of Adjusted Chronotype. So, for free, every turn you can remove, or rather you can avoid that first tag. And then you're just cruising on a motorcycle. So, yeah, it's a super sweet deck. It's like all good stuff, normal, great criminal deck list otherwise, and just those 5 extra cards pretty much completely negate the downside of taking the tag every turn. So, pretty sweet.
Yeah, and I think from some closing points from myself is I think Hollis really said some good stuff there, because this ID is not waiting for any support cards. Realistically, everything is already out. It's not like the game stopped and we need, this ID was left in a bad place, like it was left hanging. It has everything it needs to be very, very competitive, very, very good. I think that if I was playing Criminal right now, this is where my headspace would be, is building around this one. I like the fact that you got to roll the dice, and if there is that one card that you come up against, then you better hope that you have some kind of trickery up your sleeve, or you can just play that old school criminal tempo better than how the Corp can dig through their stuff to get what they need. Very interesting, very awesome. Where the heck is Criminals or Shaper's 50 card ID? The game will never be whole.
Damn.
We were almost there, but then we voted for the other one.
You did this, Netrunner community. We could have had it. Oh, well. Cool. I think that's spot on, man.
Yeah, man.
That's cool stuff.
Talking Thunder.
Sweet.
What do we got next?
Well, speaking of card games on motorcycles, there's nothing more badass than a motorcycle with a penguin hood ornament. I'm, of course, talking about Hot Pursuit. It's a run event. It's 2 costs and 2 influence, and it says make a run on HQ. If successful, gain 9 credits and take a tag.
The art looks weird to me, like the guy's face. It looks like, is that supposed to be somebody that they've put there purposely? It seems like it's some inside joke that we'll never know.
Yeah, I have to imagine so. I mean, it's just like such a strange... Like, there's been some strange art, but this is very unusual.
Yeah. Hasn't most Netrunner art, when they're on motorcycles, had some kind of helmet or visor? Like, this guy's just, like, out there doing his thing, right? Like, come on, if you're hot pursuit, get that helmet on. Something's dangerous gonna happen. He looks like he's just, like, cruising down, like, Sunset Strip or something like that, looking for...
Well, he's not hiding. He's got the cops on his tail. Yeah. I mean, they know he's there, right?
Jeez.
He's mugging. There you go.
All right.
So
gentlemen,
yeah,
what does this
do? Good deal? Is this a good deal? Is this a deal you want to make? Head to HQ, get net 7 credits.
7 credits is a lot, right?
It's a lot of money.
Yeah. Yeah, but like, It's good. I feel like this is good if you are absolutely disregarding the fact that you have a tag, or you're David Weeks.
This is true. This
Yeah.
is true.
I feel like I feel like the moment you calculate in that tag, and if you are considering removing that tag, no, just absolutely not. I don't think I'm gonna pay a click and 4 credits for 9 credits. Does that make sense? Because the card costs 2 to play. You're gonna gain a tag, and then you're gonna lose a click. You're gonna pay 2 credits.
But isn't that better than Sure Gamble? And you got to run on HQ.
I mean,
I agree. On its own, without anything else, not the most amazing team. It's pretty good, but not amazing. But I will say there are plenty of decks out there who are already planning on removing tags and having the tech in their deck to do so, for which this card is ball.
Yeah, and I hope that kind of fills one of the problems I've had with this game as of recent, is that they seem to nothing says new hotness like Netrunner, where some of these older runners get they don't get flushed. You can look at maybe some of these tag style cards like this and start thinking of old school Jess, right? Like,
I've been seeing it. It's the real. She's back. It's awesome, right?
Mm-hmm. I really thought that was something when she came out. I thought it was really interesting, but there was not enough cards to flush her out and make her worthy enough of a play. You start to see cards like this coming, and now my curiosity's re-peaked again. The only thing I don't like about this card, I think it's a great return on investment. I think it's a great criminal style, big money reward card. I think the influence is costed perfect for the return. The only thing I don't like is that it really pinpoints that you. Well, it doesn't really pinpoint it. It mandates it's a run on HQ. And if you're at certain times in this card's lifestyle, you might get locked out of playing it. And then so again, criminal, are you going to go for that risk for reward here, and put it in, and just hope that you can see it early enough? Maybe hard mulligan for this kind of stuff in your starting hand. But from that perspective of having something like this in criminal, that where those first pieces of ice are going, and that could potentially, if you're relying on something like this to be your predominant income, you could be out of luck pretty quick. Only downfall.
Yeah. I totally agree, and for that reason, for almost all decks that want to run this card, I agree that it's not one that you run 3x, maybe 2 if you're feeling really spicy and you can fairly reliably deal with the consequences. But yeah,
and that's why just like we were saying, it's probably gonna do a lot more damage out of faction, because someone is not going to be as heavily icing HQ against some of the other factions than they would off the bat against a criminal player.
Yep, totally.
Hollis, you on board with that?
I'm not on the board. I'm on a bike. I just want to make sure we're on the same.
That's right.
But
we're on motorbikes.
No, it's okay.
It's a risk.
Yeah, it's a risk. I agree with the assessment that it's a risk, and that it is specific to, like, how do you curve these tags? Either curve them or you don't care. Because I feel like if you care too much, it's still a problem. It's still a problem.
Yeah, I think you got to go all or nothing.
Yeah.
Yep. There you go. All right, gentlemen. May I introduce you both to the top contender for my favorite card in
Oh,
this deluxe
damn.
box. And I want to get your read on this because I don't know if my excitement is overblown here, but everything about this card just tickles me, and I love it. It is the new All-Star Criminal Console. It's Paragon.
Woo!
It's 3 install, 2 influence, gives you 1 MU. Where have we seen that before? First time you make a successful run each turn, you gain a credit. That seems good. And then you get to look at the top card of your stack, and if you do, you can optionally add that card to the bottom of your stack. Everything about this I love. The credit, it's like Desperado's back, baby. Everything's great. We're so happy. And then this ability to selectively keep cards on top or put them on the bottom. It's just so nice. It's like, it's so criminal. It's what we always wished Mr. Lee was.
Yeah, I was thinking
Too slow.
I was thinking of a way to try and work Lee into this.
Yeah, and he just took too much time, and it's like, oh, you gotta install this other thing. Now it's your console. Now you're getting the credit. You're getting this awesome ability on top of it. As a criminal player, I'm just overjoyed.
Side tangent to that, it's really funny the pace or the progression of draw within criminal. So like having to use Mr. Lee to like now you see like having a runner that just gives you 2 cards for running on HQ, right? And then there's also like Aaron and all that other stuff. But it's just an interesting arc of draw within criminal.
Yeah.
This is probably the best criminal console available to you right now.
Yeah.
So for no other
general criminal use, yeah.
For no other reason, if you need to run a console and some memory, here's what you should be looking at. It perfectly fits into criminal's play of, again, click compression. Look what you're doing. For even if you just have this out by yourself, you're not going ape crazy like you were a Desperado getting like credit. So this is, again, said it before, say it again. This is a reworking, probably what something should have been from the start, and giving you an extra bonus just so you have a little less loss to chew on. I think it's very well costed. I've heard some people say that it's expensive, but I don't think that's true. Three for the memory and the ability, and for what you're going to get from it. 2 influence. This is good return on investment. Especially for a console. Usually consoles you're wanting to see it early game anyway, to start taking advantage of their bonuses they offer. So I think this is perfect. This is a great criminal card.
Yeah. The other thing is like you say, you want to see it early, so you probably run 2 or 3 copies, and guess what? If you happen to see an extra copy on top of your deck, when you look, you just put on the bottom and you don't draw your extra copy of the card.
Yeah.
Wow. Amazing. So good. Ugh.
I'm gonna piggyback off of Jameson's side tangent because I'm gonna tell a brief story. I remember.
Oh, does it have anything to do with me playing Oracle May back in the day?
Cool.
I remember. I have a local friend named Francisco, and Francisco loved Mr. Lee. He might still love Mr. Lee, actually, but he loved Mr. Lee. And for the longest time while playing the game, I think there was enough card draw through influence and other options to where at some point we were working with building his decks and like just theory crafting, and we basically came to where we said, you know what, maybe not Mr. Lee. Like if we run Mr. Lee, run like a 1x, but then we don't ever see it, so then you might as well just run like quality time because you pay 3 for 5 or whatever. But Mr. Lee gave a better card quality versus that quantity that I talked about earlier. And I remember around the time when we were nearing the end of ever talking about Mr. Lee ever again, uh, we ended up in this weird spot in Netrunner where I think Blockade Runner had been spoiled from like an actual true like FFG spoiler. And I remember looking at it and going, okay, so Mr. Lee wasn't quite what we wanted. And then I looked at Blockade Runner and I was like, yeah, that's not quite it either. And I remember we ended up in this really weird spot where somehow the best card drawing abilities in Criminal happen to be the most extreme like drawing abilities, if you recall, right? If like for example, we ended up with Geist, which is like whole deck has to be based around this, but you have this crazy like card draw, right? And then the other side of that was we saw decks that were utilizing Drug Dealer, which again, whole different like the whole strategy has to kind of wrap around using this to the best of its ability to work correctly. And it was just comical to me that we had these cards in Criminal that were like incredibly risky and required so much effort to be built or to have those cards be built around, and they ended up being better than cards that were meant to be more universally useful, like Mr. Lee and like Blockade Runner, which I think give you great card quality, but they're asking too much or they're very slow. So it's great now, you know, looking where we are here and going, you know what, Desperado really was too strong. And look, they've kind of fixed Desperado, but I don't think that 3 for just a single credit per run would have been good enough. And actually, I would agree with that. I think when we've talked about this in theory crafting before, earlier, you know, a year or 2 years, whatever ago about Desperado, we came to the assumption that yeah, maybe 1 credit per run would be good, but is that really enough? Would you pay 3 for that? And I think they knocked this out the park. Because I feel this is strong, but it doesn't make me question, you know, what the heck were you doing? What the heck were you thinking?
Yeah.
In the design. This very much feels very good and appropriately so. You get the MU, you get the first credit, you get the credit from the free run, and then you get a little mini Lee ability. So it helps with the card quality.
And
which
can you just start throwing motivation into that equation too?
Yeah, I'll take it. Yeah, motivation Oracle May. Like it really feels like they looked at all these like crazy combos for card draw that were kind of like being leveraged in other places, and Paragon feels like such. We talked before about like what consoles, if we were to like put in any faction, were sort of like they're very vanilla, right? Like what about this console is makes it vanilla or is very specific to a theme within the faction? Now, of course, Criminal has a ton of like Criminal historically has had the card quality draws, right? They're not volatile draws like Anarch, and they're not these giant quantity draws like Shaper. They're like usually look at 2, choose 1, or draw 3, shuffle 1 from your hand to your deck, like Blockade Runner. So this fits in that Criminal pie, and then it clearly ties into the like old school Desperado. The one thing that I think that this thing does, or the only other console I can think that's more vanilla that I feel is better, is Zero. Right? Like, because Zero's good. So this just seems like if I have to choose, like, if I'm thinking about like vanilla consoles that I just like in general, they're just good, averagely good or above average, that I feel like I could put anywhere. Paragon is near the top of that list because it's not specific to anything. If I was gonna hand a new player a deck, I know this is like crazy near the game's end, but if I was gonna hand a player a deck and they would say, "Hey, what console just seems to be kind of good anywhere?" I would just look at them and go, "Paragon's okay." Like whatever, it's 2 influence. Put it in wherever you need to, Johnny, Timmy, Spike, whatever. Just use it. I don't care.
Yeah, and I think that from that perspective too, again, like you see the taking and revisiting these older mechanics and fine tuning it, right? Like you're fine tuning and adding back in a Mr. Lee. You have the Desperado, and like as in the card that annoyed me to most end was motivation, because I used to really think or really play these cool Oracle May motivation decks, but motivation was such a waste of a card slot because you're just needing it to activate Oracle May. It did nothing else. It did no benefit. And it was a resource but you had no way to specifically search for it. So it was such a shitty card, unless you were playing that combo, and then you were handcuffed. But this card here takes the best in the of each of those characteristics, shapes it up a lot more, and yeah, really puts a polish on it. Really like this one. Nothing bad to say.
Thumbs up. Now let me ask you guys, what if I could sweeten that deal? What if I could tell you you can get more out of your runs every turn?
What?
Every run, in fact.
For the
Get
Sounds like an
value.
info.
for the low price of what, Alec? I'm tuned into
The
your shopping
low-
entry.
Low price of 1 credit and 1 MU and 2 influence if you're out of criminal. You can get Bankroll. Ooh, it's a program, and it says whenever you make a successful run, whenever, mind you, you may place 1 credit from the bank on Bankroll. And then, unbelievably, whenever you want, you can trash this program, and you get all the credits that you've stored up on Bankroll. Amazing. Amazing. It's like so much win. It's so much value. It's like all the credits. This card is great too. I really appreciate criminals being given more incentives to get back out there and do the things that they do best, which is run their butts off. And I love how this card rewards skillful play and good game sense, and knowing when is the time to finally cash it in and when is the time to keep it rolling. It's not unique, so you can have multiples. It also stacks with all the other supposed to run triggers. It's just like,
Are you just
check all the boxes.
you're just checking all the boxes, taking all the talking points for yourself, you greedy man.
I'm sorry. I'm too excited. Please, gentlemen, please. Is this a deal you're interested in making?
Yes, and if I act now, what else can you throw in for me? These late night shopping network deals here.
Oh, so excited.
I don't know if
All
you're.
right. Well, please.
It's like a
please,
Shark
please.
Tank here, swimming in the Shark Tank. You Mark Cuban. I have nothing else to complain about this card. This is a great card at the end of the cycle, at the end of the game, just to say, hey, guess what? We're taking Criminal back to its roots. We're doing run events, but in a different way. So all you're doing is rewarding runs. You're telling Criminal, this is your original mechanic, and we're just gonna sail off into the sunset with it. I like it a lot. I like the fact again that it's not a unique card, so you're gonna be like stacking. You're doing that Criminal fandanglement, and I think this card should definitely see play.
I love too that there's no caveats, right? You could design a version of this card that's like cash or lamprey or pad tap, where it's like, ooh, you need to give the corp some way to deal with this because maybe it's a lot of money. But no, it's like, this is just going to happen.
Yeah.
Right? What corp is going to go out of their way to try and deal with this card? They're not. So you're going to get a lot of value as long as you can make those successful runs. And guess what? You're probably going to.
Mm-hmm. Doing it as a program, very interesting design state. Again, Criminal could be getting all the money with this, going ape bananas, and doing it as a fast effect as a trash. Again, playing into that design space where you can just do it kind of wherever you want. Right. So, really awesome card. 3 thumbs up.
Yes.
Right, Mr. Hollis?
I don't even have anything to add. I really do think this is good. At one, we just talked about Desperado, like how they fixed it, and they're like, you know what, this is a more fair way to do this. Make it a one-time use ish. And it accumulates from anywhere, just like Desperado. And then you bank them all in your bankroll, and then you make it rain when it's time.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And then all of them will add up. All the other runner effects accumulate, and you just get that roll.
Yeah, I dig it.
One of my favorite uses, just a little side tangent, is when the corporation has economic warfares out, right, and is ready for that big hard-hitting news, and they have to respect the fact that they could drain away 8 credits from you, right? They could go warfare, and then you go, hold on, and then you pop one of these, and you're back in the money, and now, like, can they hit you with hard-hitting news? Probably not.
I thought you were gonna say, and probably anyway, but
well, yeah. But hey, we're assuming you've got some money. Anyway, yeah, Bankroll, thumbs up.
That's what I usually do with Hollis, and I'm usually wrong.
All right, Hollis.
Dang.
All right, Hollis, I know you're no stranger to discussion about the quality of cards, and I've got a real conundrum for you here. This one is a thinker. It's not totally clear. Unlike the last several we've talked about, which I think we've given a lot of thumbs to, I don't know where I'm putting my thumbs with this one. So this is Tycoon. It's an icebreaker. It's a fractor out of Criminal. Okay. It's 1 to install. It's 1 strength and 2 influence. And for 1 credit, you can break up to 2 barrier subroutines. And for 2 credits, you get +3 strength. Crazy stats, right?
Okay.
But it's got a little bit of text.
Jameson, get ready.
Okay. It says, whenever an encounter with a piece of ice in which you use Tycoon to break a subroutine ends, the Corp gains 2 credits. Is this a deal that you're interested in making?
Very efficient.
Crazy efficient.
Yeah, very efficient, but I have to give you 2 credits for the very efficient also because of the install cost. Wow. But I have to give you 2 credits every time I break a piece of ice with this breaker. I think I don't want to play this. Let me tell you why.
All right.
I feel like the moment I play this, even though I can break barriers efficiently, I feel as though the Corp is still going to be able to game this very much in their advantage and keep me out in the servers I need to be accessing. Because I can see how there's a clear advantage here for maybe this weird part in the early mid game where I'm going to get credit siphoned. And I want to maybe bump the Corp up credits to remove them. Possibly. But then I see later there being an issue where now I'm simply, even if I break barriers efficiently, now that I've amassed additional credits for you, you are now going to place code gates and sentries in front of barriers so that now there's an uploaded cost first that I have to spend before I can even get to the barrier and then make you money. I feel like ultimately this ends up an advantage for the Corp than it does for me as a runner. What do you guys think?
I think we're playing in a very niche market where I think that at certain times when you look at what this card can do and you're if you are, say, a numbers guy, I think there's going to be times when you're going to come out ahead when you're breaking some of these bigger meteor barriers. But I don't think that's going to be for everybody because there is still better options out there. Maybe this is like one of those times when you have that flex kind of breaker program where if we swing towards heavy ice, or there's certain ice like you had back in the day where some people kept like a David or a Atman in their deck just to counter that weird meta swing of somebody dropping you know, those weird one-offs or meta calls. I think that might be the case with this card. Have it kind of in your back pocket, up your sleeve, and only play it if you so need to. I don't think that it's really got a calling to be out there. You know, maybe in a far stretch case where you're looking to put something, where you're looking for a fractor because you kind of messed up your influence count, or you've allocated it somewhere else, and you're kind of you're like, oh, I need a fractor and I have to stay in faction for it. Well, you know, maybe this is a stretch for that, but I mean, most of the time you're probably looking elsewhere.
I agree with all your assessments, and yes, most of the time I agree. You're going to want to look elsewhere. I want to present to you briefly 2 cases where I actually think this card is quite good, and ones that I want to encourage people to think about when they're making criminal decks. The first is in combination with the turtle. Joshua mentioned this in chat, and I think they're spot on. If you've got a turtle sitting around, sometimes it needs a little help, and this card is really great. Dropping down those wraparounds, getting around the occasional barrier if they've just purged. Great. So it's the backup, it's the just in case, and it only costs 1. And so for that purpose, I think it's the best backup fractor choice. The second, that has not been mentioned yet, that I actually think is really legit, is if one of your primary econ sources and your restricted card of choice is Tapworm. Tapworm is legit. It's always been legit. It's on the restricted list for a reason. And with this card, you can engage in some shenanigans. Because you are pumping up the corp, and as such, you're pumping up yourself. So Tapworm fanatics, take a look at Tycoon, because you get to reap those rewards of rewarding the corp with credits. So just want to put that up.
All right, what's next, man?
I'm skeptical.
Skeptical? Not a great deal.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's keep it going. Let's talk about Thunder Art Gallery. It's a pretty cool place to be. It's a ritzy location. Unique, 3 install, 2 influence. It says the first time you avoid or remove a tag each turn, you may install a card from your grip, lowering its install cost by 1. Wow. So you get the click for install, you get the click for the credit of reducing. I say if you're in a deck that expects to avoid or remove tags, 1 Thunder Art Gallery in your deck, it's not a big deal. I think it's a fine little bonus, a little extra. Right?
Huh.
Hollis, what do you got?
One sec. I'm reading the card again.
Okay. Let me float out there, by the way. I've mentioned this on cast before, that one of my favorite cards, just like a super solid staple for criminals and decks outside of criminal, is Career Fair. And this card lines up really nicely with Career Fair as well. So just an extra little plug for one of my favorite little econ pieces. But is it worth a card slot? That is the question.
People can call me dumb after I say this in the chat. Or, I mean, they're going to call me dumb anyways. I don't think so. And the reason why is I feel like even if you are avoiding the tag, I don't think that the cost of a three cost resource, even with Career Fair, is worth it to reduce the install cost by 1. I think most of the time you're going to want to use your career fare on a different card. I think you're going to want to use I think you'll want like daily cast. I think you'll want to put in a different resource in your deck that's going to net more money throughout the game. Unless you are avoiding hefty amounts of tags during the game, even then, I mean, let's do the math then, right? If you career fare a daily cast, then you're going to gain 8 credits, and you've really not had to do much except use career fare every daily cast. For this card to gain you 8 credits, you need to career fare it, and then you need to avoid 8 tags plus have a card in your hand that you want to play at that moment in time. Sorry, install, not play, install, just to be clear, because obviously you can't use events. So I'm going to say that while this is a value, agreed, it's not worth it. I don't think it's the best value. But, Alec, you are the value king.
Welcome to Value Town.
Yeah. What's up, Value Town?
Yeah, so I'll leave that part of it to you.
Yeah. I think you're spot on for a majority of criminal decks. I think it's been interesting to go through these criminal cards and really be thinking about which are more general ones like Paragon or Bankroll that might fit in many or all criminal decks. And then cards like this, which, yeah, I think on the whole are pretty niche and are pretty hard to justify outside of specific decks. I will say, though, having tried this in the tag avoidance or tag removal kind of Liza Talking Thunder, this card does put in work.
Okay.
But your distribution of installables has to be pretty good. Now, on the turns that you're getting that tag, you're also drawing the cards from her ability, so you're more likely to have something to install. So I think it's pretty solid for that specific deck. But I agree that on the whole, you're going to struggle to find value outside of that fairly reliable trigger that Liza gives.
Yeah, and I think that I really wonder the amount of setup, really that is going into, say some like a standard criminal these days with Liza. I mean, criminal has always been very event heavy, and if we're seeing that turn back to that kind of play, I don't think this is good. Like, this is not an auto include for her. This is not a card that marries 1-to-1 with that ID. I again, when we look at these cards that are talking about tags, I can't help but think a card like this paired again in Jess and in a faction that actually sets up and builds would see a better complementary effect going on there. So again, for me is the same, very niche, not played everywhere, kind of weird time for this card to come out. Shaper players, you guys play with this more than maybe the criminals do, I would say.
I will just take a moment to rebut that point just a bit. Having played quite a bit of Nexus decks recently, especially out of Criminal, I've seen that it's not uncommon to get board states of installed cards that rival even the largest Shaper rigs. Recently, I was at a get-together of some folks playing some Netrunner. I look over at a Liza deck, a Nexus Liza deck, and I made the comment that it was like, what are criminals, the new Shapers, right? Because there were so many cards installed. Because this deck builds up this incredible machine of Nexus, your link sources, Maxwell, Turning Wheel, Rogue Trading. There are a lot of installables in the Nexus version of these decks. way more than Criminal ever has in the past, outside of maybe Geist. So I do think there are a lot of cards.
But are you saying that one is the go-to one? Like when we talk about Liza's builds, she's going to be an installer rather than a event runner?
It depends on which direction you want to go. I have seen the power of the Tag Me deck, and it is pretty strong. But I think it's way more fragile, right? Because it can run into these meta problems. And the Nexus deck suffers less of that. It's overall less powerful, but it's more consistent. And for players who want that kind of consistency, the deck really performs, and Nexus really gets you there. But it takes some time to set up, and this cuts down on that setup time a significant degree.
I myself would prefer the event one, and then I know, Alec, that you probably have to lean towards event as well then, right? Because then you can't play your Paragon, which is your best card in the pack.
Yeah, you know.
You're struggling over there, aren't
Sacrifices.
you? Struggling.
I do like the Nexus deck a lot. Yeah, it's hard to choose. But I think even in that deck, you know, one of at most, I think running 2 of this card, even in decks that really, really, really want it, is kind of a stretch because the second copy is kind of dead. So there you go.
You want to put a bow on this Criminal?
All right.
Let's wrap it.
Let's take it home. Let's take it home to the final Criminal card from Reign and Reverie.
Dun, 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 dun.
The excellent, the well-timed Miss Bones. Miss Bones is a unique connection, 2 to install, 2 influence, and you place 12 credits from the bank on Miss Bones when she's installed. When there's no credits left, you trash the card, and you can use these credits to trash installed cards. There you go.
Yeah.
Some money. That's some nice little money there.
Oh, what a lackluster way to end.
It's so funny how many packs that we have talked about on the show where that last card. When will they learn? When will they get this right? That you put the most exciting card last? Because for folks like us,
yeah. We're never building to anything.
Where's the dramatic tension?
I know this is one roller coaster ride, but it's the start where we're at the top and you're just taking it straight down.
Right.
And the only peak again is the start of the new episode. So it forces you to watch more bad publicity.
That's right.
I think that this is a card that was needed in a different time. It's not to say that inside of a vacuum or looking at it, are you getting great value from her? Yeah. Investing 2 credits in a deck slot, I mean, I think that's worth the credit return that you're able to get. How many times have you run a server and maybe miscalculated what was there and had no credits left to trash something, or been in a very sticky situation time ago in the time of asset spam where if you could have just been like, run here, bones, run there, bones, and then still have your separate credit pool, man, we would have, everyone would be running 3 copies of this back in the day. I think unfortunately Bones showed up to the party a little late, and unless we swing back to that asset spammy style of gameplay, at that point then Bones will be prevalent, but I don't think that's happening right now.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. This is a real kind of meta call card, and it's hard to justify including unless you expect a ton of asset spam. Is that the time for that right now? That's debatable. Could it be that time by the time Worlds rolls around? I guess we'll have to wait and see. But if and when asset spam does become the go-to deck again, and some would argue I think that it's never really left, then and your deck is struggling to deal with it otherwise, then this card is there for you, and I think that's nice.
I would prefer. No, I'm being nitpicky. I agree with everything that's been stated.
Thank you.
But I kind of wish this card was one to install.
Then the,
You know what I mean?
numbers wouldn't line up evenly. There's something kind of nice and even about 2 and 12.
Like, I wish Criminal has this thing where it's like, like you gain 9 credits but to do this big thing, but then you take a tag or whatever, like the number is. Because that seems to be that's a common thing in Netrunner. It's like, for example, Stim Hack, get 9 credits right now, but you're gonna take a brain. Like install a card for this huge discount, but you're gonna take a tag. Oh no! So it just feels like if this was just like a 0, even.
So
0-9.
So here's a question then, Hollis. Alec, you can answer it too. I'm not
Thanks.
biased here.
Thanks, Jameson.
Are we playing or comparing, apples to oranges here, or blueberries to oranges for color for color thematics? Is this better or worse than a scrubber? I mean, scrubber was kept for that reason, right? Probably moved to revised core as that card that is supposed to be that bump against asset spammy stuff. So where do we go? Like, does this mean that, well, I guess if you're Anarch, just play scrubber, and if you're Criminal, now you can just save those, 1 influence per card, and you can just play Bones. And if you're Shaper, you can take your pick.
There's always Parisha.
Yeah.
That's that card. There you go.
Right. So where is that? Where what it boils down to is we just needed something in faction to handle it if it bubbled up.
That's probably the case. I don't know. It's a tough call.
You got that look in your eye, like you're like, I got to do more testing here before I make a judgment.
Yeah. God, this is hard. I don't know how to articulate this correctly, but I'll try. So, like scrubber costs 2, but of course the credits are reoccurring, which means that scrubbers, if you have 1 or 2, but I'm just gonna, let's just say 1, right? Scrubber can generate a value equivalent to however much is required based on the cards you have to trash, right? Scrubber can do nothing, but Scrubber can also do everything. Scrubber can be 24 credits throughout the game, or 30 credits, or any number of credits, right? Especially when you consider decks like Val, where you're going to get a credit every single run, and so like all of a sudden things like Val with the Scrubber are like disgusting, because now every turn you can trash something with 3 free credits to trash, and then you still get a credit per run. This, man, I don't even feel right saying this. I think Miss Bones might be weaker than Scrubber, but the biggest benefit is that it's in faction, so there's no even 1 influence cost that you have to pay in Criminal to be able to have extra cash to trash cards with. It feels like this card exists purely just for that purpose alone. And this is where I sort of like have now the narrative, like I'm the dialogue in my own head is I'm trying to do I'm trying to like do this evaluation here in like efficiency, and I'm trying to be Alec, and I'm trying to figure out the true value here in Value Town. And it's hard for me to see it because so Scrubber costs 2, so there's the uploaded cost, but now I have 2 every time I trash something. So in the best matchup for the Scrubber, I have credits that keep rolling in. I'm straight up saving money every single turn. Ms. Bones cost me 2, but it's not only unique, but it's got a limited amount of credits on it that I get rid of. And so I don't necessarily want to just, if I play Ms. Bones, like I don't want to max my deck full of Ms. Bones because the cards may never be useful, but if I have multiple scrubber in play, anytime I encounter something that's trashable, I immediately save money all of the time throughout that whole game. And I don't know how valuable that is. Like, it's hard for me to do that evaluation. 12 credits is good, but I'd rather miss Bones, given the fact that I think it's worse than Scrubber. I think that makes me want it to be a 0 card that is 9 credits just for trashing. Because it's unique.
Yeah. Because if it's not clear for folks at home, Miss Bones says trashing installed cards. Scrubber says trash cards. Therefore, Scrubber is useful in a proactive sense. If you're heading to their centrals, you're finding Jackson Howards, you're finding pad campaigns that aren't installed yet. You're like, get this out of here. Trash, 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 right? Miss Bones, you got to wait around until they actually install the darn cards. Then you got to go over and deal with them, and then she's ready to go. Like, so it's a reactive kind of economic benefit rather than the proactive one that Scrubber potentially
Yeah,
offers.
you're not knocking cards off of out of a central. You're not minimizing hand or killing killing up combos, right? So yeah, that's why she lackluster.
Man, yeah, no, actually, you know what, man, jeez, oh my God, Alec, wow, I honestly missed. I mean, that makes me really bad, but I honestly missed that distinction. Like,
No, it's subtle.
The fact that Miss Bones says trash installed cards, that actually means that if I have Miss Bones, and I hit, like you said, if I hit HQ R&D and I see a card that I know is trashable, I don't gain that value from Miss Bones. I feel like even if they were like very close and Miss Bones was right here, I think that either makes them on par or puts Scrubber above. And I already thought Scrubber was a little better. So if Miss Bones was possibly a little better, the fact that now I can't even I have to spend my own credits hitting HQ and R&D, that doesn't sound like great value at all.
No.
Not when there's ice that's trashable, and I like you said, Alec, proactively get rid of things before they can hit the table. That's a big hit or a bigger hit.
Right. It's especially in a faction that you really want to be stacking those bonuses for running centrals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is a faction. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say it's like the most meta of meta calls.
And this isn't. I mean, no, not again. Beating a dead horse. It's also thinking about the concept is it's in the fact. Of course, every runner wants to run a lot, but it's in the faction that incentivizes you to run with abandon. It's in the faction that says we just saw a couple cards, right? It's in the faction that asks you, hey, make the run, gain a tag, gain some credits, hit this card. All right, trash. But Ms. Bones doesn't let you do it. Ms. Bones says, did you just hit this Ash or whatever? Did you hit Rashida or any number of cards? It says, sorry, if this was in hand or in the deck and not on the table, then you spend regular money on this. You don't get to pull credits off of Miss Bones. The card has to be installed first. And this is sort of the issue. A lot of the cards that are going to be played that you're going to run towards, even if it's not asset spam, a lot of those cards are going to be, as you come to interact with it in Geofront, Rashida Jackson, so on and so forth, I'm going to trigger it now to do something. So you don't really ever get to trash.
Yep.
Man, that's interesting. I don't know. I want to add, Adrian Herbert makes a great point also. I don't know that if it's necessarily ever going to be the case where I want to say Scrubber's better in the long term, but you may not ever trash more. You may not ever get more than 6. Like, that could be a very uncommon scenario. This is hard. I feel like this verse Scrubber to me seems like it's a little harder. I don't know.
Ooh.
I could be way off.
Here's the crazy.
You're gonna have a restless night of sleep now. I'm sorry, Hollis.
Well, let me put your concerns to bed. I just want to make the point so you can sleep well at night.
Appreciate it.
Pop quiz: how many copies of Scrubber are showing up at top table decks at regionals and nationals.
That would be a grand total of 0.
I rest my case.
So, yeah, you're right.
I was gonna say it.
You are right though.
I was gonna say it depends on how many people are playing at that table. If it's shared between 2 games,
Yeah.
I'm debating which card is better on a comparison of 2 really probably not playable cards.
We're trying to have one last hurrah for criminals, and man,
Yep.
can't get it. Oh well.
that concludes it. That's
Hey.
There's your criminal batch, freshly picked, and delivered to you from your local farmers market. I got nothing. Thank you very much for everybody who tuned in, hanging out with us tonight as we walk through those 7 criminal cards. Appreciate everyone that's throwing in the chat. Appreciate all the regulars, all the new people. If you're discovering us for the first time, hang in there. We got still more Netrunner episodes to go. So let us be your tour guide through the Hitchhiker's Guide to Netrunner here, and we will be back with green. Find out what that means next time.
Yes.
Bad Publicity.
Cool.